This is Matt.
This is Seth.
Welcome to
The Unbroken Net.
This is a podcast where we're going to share with you some ridiculous ideas.
Yeah, and who cares if you believe what we believe? Just think for yourself.
That's all we're asking. Good day to all of us who are caught in the unbroken net. Today we'll be covering the passage in James chapter 3 verses 1 through 12, talking about taming the tongue. So this should be fun. Seth, why don't you go ahead and read that for us?
I don't feel like teaching today, Matt.
Okay. Just listen.
Okay. Well, here we go. So, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also, though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire! And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, yet on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature, can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening from both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. So I understand what he's saying, the kind of getting to in this passage, but a lot of it doesn't seem to make sense. Like
what?
Well, I mean, just when he's talking about the fig tree and it doesn't bear olives or the grapevine produce figs. It's like, so you're saying that we can't, if we are one way, we can't be another.
Well, just think about the fruits here for a moment, right? And first off, who are the teachers and what is their role in the body? Mm-hmm. And why does this little thing called the tongue have so much power?
Yeah.
And so we look at this, and we'll get to the figs and the, the grapes. But
let's not get ahead of ourselves. I kind of jumped the gun on that one.
Yeah, you got excited. That's okay. So not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. So what's this judgment? Tell me about this. What is this judgment?
Oh, isn't it God judging the pastors?
Well, here's the question, right? If you're a teacher, where are you getting your information? Mm-hmm. And are you being faithful to the information you've been given? Yeah.
Well, does that mean that we should, most of this passage he's talking about we should bridle our tongue.
You got to control it.
Does that mean if you do that and you speak what you believe, you will not be judged? Or is he... What is he saying in that first verse?
So the question is, who's doing the judging? Mm-hmm. If you are a teacher, you will be judged, particularly by others.
Right.
Yes. Others will look at you and they will critique everything you say. And there are some people who will critique more and some people who will critique less, but there will be a judgment because you're taking a position of authority, mm-hmm. saying, I have this truth that you all need to hear, and you go out and you share that, and people are going to say, well, that doesn't fit with my reality, or that doesn't fit with my experience, or where'd you get your information? It doesn't line up with my theology. What's
Right.
going on here?
What puts you in authority? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that. Like, it does speak to me that first verse has nothing to do with God judging the people who are.
No, I don't.
I see that as, I mean, it's pretty evident. Like, you find pretty quickly if leaders or teachers in a, like, even in a church setting, they get judged very hard by their parishioners or the people who attend church. And everything that they say is like scrutinized. Yeah, I've done it. Like, I'll be like, oh wow, I don't agree with that, or that just the judgment from the pews is I think that's the judgment he's really talking about. So that makes me think, should we even have pastors?
So you got to remember that God, according to the scriptures, has given us different members within the body to guide the whole body. And saying, should there even be teachers, is like saying, should we even have tongues? Right? Of course we should have tongues. We need tongues for so many things. We need tongues to speak. We need tongues to eat. Tongues are important. And when you're looking at a body as the example, the tongue is a very small member of the body, yet it is a very powerful member of the body, because it takes what the Spirit wants to say and it says it, for good or for bad, right? You get into a place where you're filled with rage, and all of a sudden you're speaking according to the spirit of rage, and you're no longer lining up with the characteristics and ideals that you want to attain to. So you got to be careful. And as we look at teachers in particular, we get these folks who have a natural call in their life, perhaps. Not all of them, but some of them have a natural call in their life to be an instructor or a teacher or a leader within society. And then they go about it, and they're not very careful in taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. They're not careful in thinking before they speak. And all of a sudden they get these ideas, and before they've processed the full idea, they've begun teaching this idea before they had a full comprehension. And I'm only speaking from experience here, because I've done the same thing. And that's okay. Right? It's a learning process. And the important part here is that the truth will always do its job. So if you are a teacher and you speak what is true, particularly what you've come to realize is true, that's good. But not everyone's going to agree with you. And there might be times when you're wrong. So you have to take both of those into consideration.
Right. You have to know that there is the possibility of being wrong with something.
Yeah. And what do you do when you find out, oh, I've been wrong? That makes a big difference, because some teachers, when they find out they've been wrong, they don't
double down.
Yeah, they don't want to admit their fault, and so they put down harder on their thought.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I do believe that there are some who are kind of born to lead in a way, or born to teach, I should say. But I think what the trap that we fall in, I mean, there's kind of a provision just saying that if you are kind of in that group and then you are a teacher, then you will be judged with greater strictness. So you need to realize that. And I think you're right we have to realize when you're wrong. And I think if you're a teacher, you have to be careful that you're not bridling everybody else's tongue.
And so you can influence other people with ideas. And you can bridle your own tongue. But in this picture, when you realize how hard it is to bridle your own tongue, you realize how important it is that as a teacher, you are properly directing the people. Because what happens? You get this leader who's charismatic, and has smiles and energy and body language that attracts an audience and catches people's attention and gets them intrigued. And then all of a sudden, the entire church is saying everyone is sinful and going to hell, right? Because they've listened to a teacher who said that there's none righteous, not even one. So we're all condemned, and there's only one way out, and it's if you follow my way, right?
And I think a lot of us have a tendency to kind of latch on to one teaching, like trying to find that truth, and we can only find that truth in one person, and we latch onto that person like they have all the truth, and there's no truth besides what they speak, because they found it. But I don't think any one person can find all truth.
No. And it's not even about listening to someone who has found the truth, other than hearing their story and their experience to help guide and direct your heart to walk with God in the same way or your own way, so that you learn and grow and develop directly from your relationship with God. And you find your truth. You find your pearl of greatest value, and you sell everything and you hold on to it. Not because some teacher taught you, but because you learned from the teacher of teachers, from the Holy Spirit, from the Spirit of Christ, from the indwelling Creator. You've walked with the Creator, you've talked with the Creator, you've reasoned with the Creator, and you've come to conclusions with the Creator, and you share those with others and see how they line up and see if it resonates with anyone else.
Yeah, so now that we spent like 12 minutes on that first verse.
Yeah. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. If you can control your tongue, if you can capture your thoughts before you release them, you can control a whole lot of your body. There are some people who are great athletes and they control their body, and they do so well at controlling what they eat, what they do, how they sleep, the exercises they do, the rest that they give, the patterns by which they exercise their different groups of muscles. But if they are unable to control their tongue, it's kind of like all the sweetness of their physique is lost due to the bitterness of their spirit. But if you can control your tongue, you can hold in your rage, you can gather your thoughts, you can remove the judgment, and you can just listen to what has been said and respond in love, the way that God would respond, not the way that a person who's not walking with God would respond. It's tough, and
Yeah, this verse kind of to me is like almost like tongue in cheek, like because he says that whoever can do this is a perfect man, but then he goes on to say that nobody can bridle his tongue. So it's not really possible to do this. We can
well, because you don't know what tomorrow holds, right? You don't know what the future is. And so you might be doing really well holding your tongue, but all it takes is one scenario where you're weak in a couple areas and you're caught off guard and you just told so-and-so off.
Yeah.
Because they maybe were a teacher or someone who was trying to exercise authority over you and you disagreed with them.
Right. So what does he mean when he say, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well? That's
right. So thinking about the illustration of the tongue, right?
Yeah.
And again, the bit in the mouth. You have this spokesman, right? Every once in a while, there are these people that seem to be raised up with a spirit of a teacher, and they are there to guide and direct the people, the family of God, the nations, the world, towards a deeper relationship with God. And they can do that. They can guide the entire horse just by this little movement of the mouth. And who moves the mouth? The person who's driving the horse.
Right.
And who's driving your mouth? Are you driving your mouth?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Or is God driving your mouth? Because if you're a teacher, people are going to listen to you and people are going to respond to what you have to say. And some will judge you harshly, but others will judge you righteously. And then they'll believe you see this all the time in these cults, in these churches, where you have this teacher that everyone is captivated with, and everything that brother so-and-so says is God's word, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know? And you have to be super careful with that, because you get this whole body of people being directed by this one individual who may or may not be walking with God.
Like the mouthpiece.
The mouthpiece.
Right? Wow, that's a revelation for me. Like in my mind, I was thinking the bit was like us putting that in our mouths and we controlling ourselves. But then you say that, the horse doesn't control his mouth with that bit. It's the driver. That's
the driver.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing for the next example. He says, look at the ships also, though they are so large and are driven by strong winds. They are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs.
That's right.
And we're not the pilot.
We're the rudder. If we're the teacher, we're the rudder.
Well, we're the whole body, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
But we're controlled.
In both illustrations.
Yeah.
We're controlled by the Spirit. We're controlled by our spirit in connection with either God's Spirit or a dark spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what spirit are we listening to?
And I don't think it's any mistake that this comes right after the last chapter that we read about faith and works.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It doesn't come by mistake. It's by design.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What a revelation. So, let's look at the next verse here. So, also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about with the teachers that teach, and if they have that charisma, they have that power. If they're driven by a strong spirit, whatever kind of spirit that is, hopefully it's from God, and then they can lead these giant masses, which would and he's akinning it to a forest which is set ablaze by one small fire, and that's that one mouth, that one tongue that could set that whole thing afire.
It just takes one little ember in a dry forest with a little bit of wind before you have a huge blaze. One little ember. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I've never lit a forest on fire except in my local community when I was excommunicated by the evangelical churches.
Yeah.
That was wild. What an experience. And so much to learn from it. We see all these examples anyways, it's true. It just takes a couple of words and all of a sudden there is a raging forest fire and no one knows what to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was your tongue that was setting that fire ablaze, but okay.
No.
Anyways.
Okay.
let's keep to the passage here. Okay,
keep to the passage.
And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. So he's kind of, in this verse, he's kind of looking at one side of this, like looking at the unrighteousness, and then saying that the entire course of life is set on fire by hell. So I wonder why he's kind of just looking at this in one light. He's not looking at the other side, which we're talking about, which would be God controlling.
Well, because he's addressing an issue.
Yeah.
So he's not just giving a theological treatise and explanation on this particular topic. He's trying to say, hey, listen, there's problems among you, and let me try to help. Let me show you what's going on here, is what he's trying to do. He's trying to direct a group of people. So that's why his argument is directed towards them from one direction instead of being more all-inclusive. That would be unnecessary to his point.
Mm-hmm. So is this kind of it'd be an advisory not only how do I say that? Like not only for a teacher to make sure his mouth is bridled in the correct way, but also that the members of the body also are guided by a spirit and not by a person, not by a teacher.
That's it.
Don't let that fire set. Don't let the force be burnt down by one person.
No, and it's never just one person, right? It spreads.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is and you're right. It wasn't my words that caused that firestorm. It was the responses that were given from others who were condemning that caused a big division in the community. And there are times where it seems like every word that is spoken by certain individuals in certain circumstances seems to be set on fire by hell.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the only place the tongue is given inspiration from, because the tongue can do great things too. Mm-hmm. What doesn't he even say it down in verse 9? With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse the people who are made in the likeness of God. So
that says it kind of brings a double-sidedness to it.
Yeah, because it can go both ways, and every creature can be trained, right? Every creature can be tamed, and everything has been tamed. So we look at us, and we can be directed very easily by a spirit. Mm-hmm. And that's why in 1 John he says that we need to test the spirits, right? So we have the Spirit of God leading us that can completely direct our life. And then we have the spirit of the fallen ones that are directing us that can completely direct our life. And the key there is to realize that you are more than just a tongue. You have been made in the image of your Maker. And so you get to work with your Maker and determine what words are appropriate and what words aren't. So you should be ready. You should be ready to evaluate your thoughts and not speak out of turn.
Mm-hmm. And it is interesting in verse 9 that you just brought up. I think he's addressing another issue is where I think even if we look at what Jesus said about the one commandment that we should follow is to love God and love our neighbors. I think he's bringing that out here. He's saying that, well, we're doing the first part fine with we're blessing our Lord and Father, but then we don't think about the second part, and we start to curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Mm-hmm. Because Jesus said it's one and the same. It's like the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you love God, you must love others.
Love others. Because if you don't love others, then are you really loving God? Because God made those others in his image and after his likeness, just like he made you.
Right. And if we're not forgiving, he says that if we're not forgiving a brother, we're not receiving forgiveness from God. And I don't think that's God like not forgiving us. It's just that
we're not able to take advantage of it because we don't think it's real, right? Yeah. Because we're not giving it to anyone else. Yeah,
which is, it all ties in with the works and the faith. And if your works are not an outpouring of your faith, then your faith is dead. Or let's say that it's your tongue. If your tongue is not an outpouring of from what you believe that God, who God is, and then how God pours, or is directing bridling your tongue. I don't know if that made sense, but I said it anyways.
You said it. Can't take it back now.
Oh, you're kind of far back. Nobody's going to hear you.
Nobody heard me.
Yeah, so then I think what he's getting at is just let let that spirit guide your tongue. Let's see. So verse 10, he says, "From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so." Okay, well, they ought not to be so, but you just said that we can't tame it.
So what do?
Yeah, what's the answer here?
Keep going, right? With the verses here, spring pour forth fresh and salt. Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives? Grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond produce fresh water. Your heart, who you are, your substance, your spirit, your soul, your very character and being come out through what you say. And I had a friend tell me one time, if you tell the truth, you never have to remember anything. And there are a lot of people who can get caught up with having memorized all the right answers. And they just, they say what they've been taught, but they don't realize what it's like to be taught directly from God. They only know what it's like to be taught from a teacher. And they follow these teachers, and they get to this place where they're saying some blessing, but they're saying some curse. Because the teacher they've been following, not God, the leader, has shown them divisions among them, classifications of people where you have this group and this group, and all of a sudden there's this division, and we can say, oh, these over here are this, these over here are this, and we make room in our life to have both salt water and fresh water. These people are dead, these people are alive. These people can have life living within them. These people, the salt water has nothing living in them except maybe some amoebas.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's, I think there's a distinction. Like I think we can say that somebody doesn't have life in them right now, but it's not because God has made that way. But I think when people say that they can't have life in them and they are dead, that's what the distinction. Because we can see somebody who's they're not full of life, and I think we would say that it's because they have some wrong thinking in their mind. They don't have a true reality of who God is or who they are. So, but I don't know, maybe that's just us judging too.
Well, it's interesting too because when you think of a salt pond and a freshwater pond, when you think of a fig tree and an olive tree and a grapevine, like all of these things do what they're supposed to do without question. They just do it.
Yeah.
And then you get people that, now here's the cool part, we've been made in the image of God, unlike everything else in creation, right? And all of a sudden, we have these potentials. We could be salty, we could be fresh, we could be a fire, or we could be a salve. You know, we could bring good things to the world, or we could bring curses to the world. And we have these options. We've been made in the image of God, and I feel like we're really like the only thing in creation that doesn't do what it's told.
Yeah, and hold on to that thought. Before we get into that, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up that you made me think of before when you were talking about the teachers, like who are these people actually following? And it made me think of go back to like who's actually bridling your tongue. And then if it's not God that's bridling your tongue, you're following the incorrect way. But if it's the teachers that are bridling your tongue, that's not okay. But yeah, let's get so talking about so can a fig tree produce olives? Like, no, they can't. No. So why are we trying to produce anything else but what we were made to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the thing, is we're not a tree, we're a soul.
Mm-hmm.
And the fruit that we bear depends on the attitude that we take, So that's why you have to be really careful being a teacher, or even being anyone who thinks they know something, Like, as soon as you make something known, I think truth is this. You got to be ready for the response. But if you're going to say, I think God is love, and then you go out and you hate people, how much of God is in you? Because God doesn't have hate in
Mm-hmm.
him,
Yeah. And I'm thinking, you've heard the term, you need to bridle your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a wrong way to look at it, because, or at least James would disagree with that. I think he would say, you can't bridle your tongue. You can't tame your tongue. That's not possible.
Yeah, I would kick back on that a little bit, because we have a free will. And we have the ability to choose how we're going to respond. Now, there are times where our muscles, our spiritual muscles of choice, are atrophied because we've lived so long just off the supply given to us from our spiritual teachers, that we've forgotten to do the spiritual work of getting to know God. But no, it's you got to be honest here for a second and say, I need help, because I can bridle my tongue. I can make my tongue say whatever I want it to say.
Okay, I don't agree.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think so. If you try to bridle your tongue and you have a wrong spirit behind it,
Yeah.
I think it's fruitless. I don't think you're going to be able to do it.
Because even if you can control your words, you're not going to control your heart, your emotions.
Whatever is in your heart is going to outflow through your mouth.
Yeah.
So I think where James is getting at, and I think he's been trying to get this through in different ways throughout this letter, is that it's fruitless to try to do it on your own if your heart is in the wrong place.
Yeah.
If your spirit is not guided, or if you're not guided by the correct spirit, which would be of God and God's Son, Jesus, or Christ. Like, if you're not guided by the spirit of love, then you're not gonna have any success trying to bridle your tongue.
It's kind of a mystery, isn't it? Because I get it, but how can you be guided by two separate spirits at the same time? Because there are times when you're in an argument and you're really trying to share love,
Mm-hmm.
but then there are times where these emotions come up and these other things trying to guide and direct your tongue, and you have to make a choice. Like you could just go with the flow, let it rip.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You get in the zone and you just go for it, right? And,
Yeah.
And let the chips fall where they do. But yeah, it's a mystery to a degree how that works.
Yeah.
At least it is to me. Maybe you got it figured out.
Well, I wouldn't say that. That would make me a teacher, right? Well, or could get scrutinized for it. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess there's always the choice, but then if and I don't know, what does that even mean now I think about it? It's like, what does it mean to be guided by the correct spirit? What does it mean to be bridled by the right spirit? How do you allow that to happen? How do you know when that voice that you're hearing is from God, or when that voice is of a unrighteous spirit? How do you know that? And I guess it's really like I guess that's part of the testing the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what is it that you are testing it by? Is it because is it one of is whatever you're going to say, is it outpouring of love, mercy, grace, or is it outpouring of judgment, condemnation, pride? I guess that's, and we do have to make that decision. I don't know, but I feel like what James is trying to say is that you have to have this core, that something in you like something to your core you have to believe in order to be able to to have that bridled tongue by the correct spirit.
And I think it goes beyond belief. It goes to a knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what the heart of God is like to know how to govern and guide your own heart.
Yeah, you have to know what spirit you are of.
Mm-hmm. So there's a knowledge there. That knowledge comes with experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you experience your own shortcomings and failures, and the more you evaluate those and look into them, the more you can find ways to overcome them. So that, like, we get this idea that it's one or the other, but we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of like we're floating between these two extremes, and we're trying to find this balance, this equilibrium, so that we can smoothly go along. And life doesn't give us very many flat roads. Usually there's some ups and downs and some turns. And so as we go through this journey called life, and we learn ourselves and we learn what other people are like, but the most important thing is to learn what you are like, to know yourself. Because once you know yourself and you know who you are and what image you've been made in and what likeness you've been made after, you know how to live a fulfilled life, a life of contentment and peace with one another and peace within yourself, and content and satisfied with what is, not striving to find fulfillment somewhere. Yeah, I think that's what we're all really looking for with our words, is to have something to say, look, I'm actually of value.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. It's like we almost have this fluid nature, like we can be both sides, right? Where in nature we don't find that, like what something is what it is.
Well, I have to reevaluate that because I'm just thinking about my dogs. And every once in a while, they get caught up in the moment too. But yeah, it definitely gives you a lot to think about. I'm just thinking about how my pets, sometimes they act one way and then other times they're totally off on another thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, but they don't, but like maybe they do, but do like the beasts and birds and reptiles and sea creatures, do they have a conscience? Like, are they thinking, can they think of what's best for somebody else or what's best for me? Or,
I don't know. All of the conversations with animals that I've had have, I think they've all taken place in my mind. So I haven't heard English from any animals, but I feel like you can make connections with the animals. And I feel like most of the animals, at least in my mind, as I'm walking around, observing them, listening to them, watching their behaviors, I feel like most of the animals, they go about doing their daily living stuff, but they're always ready to declare the goodness of God. And they don't use English to do that, but they just live to do that. Like, that's part of fulfilling their nature. Jesus said, if these were to remain silent, even the rocks would cry out.
Right.
I feel like everything in creation is giving praise back to source, giving glory back to source. And man is trying to say, no, 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 there is no source. Or source is saying that we're good and these ones are bad. Or, when none of that is a reality, all there is there is what is, there is source, there is what came from source, and there is what is going to return to source.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there is. And so when we go about our days, we like to think we're bigger than what we are. We're like, oh, look at me, I'm so important. We're just a flower in the field. It grows up, it gets its sunshine, and then it dries up and withers and dies.
Right.
We're just like everything else. We're just temporary, except there's a part of us, I believe, that is eternal. And I think that is where the conscience comes in. I think that's where the mind comes in.
The spirit.
The spirit. I don't know that animals are very reasonable. You can train them, for sure.
Right. You can tame them.
But I don't know that you can have a logical, theological discussion with them. I don't think they understand that. I think they understand who they are and what they want.
So, I wonder is James saying that we can produce... well, this is where it's interesting because he says that we can produce two things. We can produce salt water. He's just making a metaphor. Water, like fresh water and salt water. But then he says that a fig tree can't produce olives, or a spring can't pour both fresh water and salt water. So how can we do that? Is that something that's different in us?
And maybe this goes back to the teachers thing. Why should not many of you become teachers? Because some of you don't have the heart to be a teacher. You don't have a heart to that's fully connected to the divine. You're still caught up in the things of the world, and you're still caught up in your own strife and anxiety and your own judgment and your own whatever. You're still in your own world, and you're not walking with God. You're not having that deep, intimate spiritual relationship. And really, you should probably keep being an olive tree instead of a fig tree. I don't know. I'm just saying that. I don't know the answer, Seth.
Yeah. That's why we're just talking about it. We don't really know what the answer is, but we can give our best.
Yeah, we can think about it.
Best idea on it. Yeah. So I think we can be... Maybe what James is saying is that we can produce two different things, and it depends on what the spirit is that's leading us you're gonna produce. But I guess let's leave that up to our listeners to figure out.
Yeah, I think they're capable.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do appreciate you listening this week. And if you like this podcast, this episode, then go ahead and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more of these episodes, then I would ask you to subscribe to our podcast. And then we will see you next week. Take care.
Bye now.